Saquon Barkley has agreed on a shocking deal with the Eagles, and Kirk Cousins has gone to the Falcons. Did NIL contribute to Nick Saban's retirement? Our early predictions on who will win March Madness, and some hot takes on trending topics in the sports world. All of that and more on this episode of Over the Line. Welcome to Over the Line. I'm your host, Jack Lydon. First up, this week's starting lineup, the NFL free agency frenzy. A lot of moves have happened in the last 48 hours, with the Barkley signing easily the most jarring here in New York. Danny, what do you make of this blockbuster deal?
I love it. I think the only thing that hangs me up is the price, $37.5 over 3 years. If they could have got this deal maybe under $30 million guaranteed, and then the incentives get you up to $37 million, I love it. Otherwise, I think it's a great fit because Barkley is one of the premier backfield workhorses in the NFL, probably second, in my opinion, only to CMC. It's going to make the Eagles' offense all the more dynamic. It's just the price tag a little much for me.
I agree with you, but when you pay a running back, and yes, they've been advocating for their pay throughout the past couple of years, but $12.5 million, whatever it is for Saquon Barkley, it's worth it. And he's probably, as you said, the second best back in the league. And to duel him with Jalen Hurts and all these weapons on the offensive side of the ball, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, the team's going to play well. This offense could be top 5 in the league. Who knows?
Kirk Cousins has agreed to terms with the Falcons, 4 years, $180 million. 36 years old, coming off that injury. What do you make of it?
Yeah, no, this is a deal I hate it because you're giving this 35-year-old guy, 35 on 36, 4 years, $180 million. This guy's going to be on contract until he's 39 years old, and he's coming off a bad Achilles injury, and he doesn't have Justin Jefferson to throw the ball to anymore. I don't like it, and I know you're gonna bring up some stuff about how well he fits in with this Falcons team. But remember, Harrison, they play in a terrible division, so of course they're going to rack up the wins.
They play in a terrible division, but again, you play who you play. You have to win those games. You play the Buccaneers, you play those teams, you got to win those games. And I love this fit because realistically, you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, you have Bijan Robinson. This offense is so dynamic, and the big thing with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, he was under a lot of pressure. The offensive line for the Atlanta Falcons is way better than the Vikings offensive line. And now having Bijan Robinson behind you in the backfield, new head coach Raheem Morris is very big on running the ball, and Bijan is going to get a ton of work, and it's going to be easier for Kirk Cousins to manage this offense.
Last thing I'm going to say, the thing is, you go with this, this swing for the fences move with a quarterback. I feel like we're seeing the terrible aftershocks of that every season now, every offseason, quarterbacks moving around because they just didn't fit with the team they inked this big deal with. I think this could be Kirk Cousins. I think this can be a real potential move where maybe he gets hurt again and then some guy you never heard of comes in and plays well. How many times have we seen that movie over the past 2 years? So I don't know. I'm giving this a fat C-.
It could blow up in the Falcons' face, but realistically, the division is bad enough. I think they're a playoff team every year with Kirk.
I don't like it.
All right, guys, we'll agree to disagree there. The NBA season is really coming down to it. Who should win the Most Valuable Player award? You got some interesting candidates, of course. Jokic going for that three-peat. You got Gilgeous-Alexander with the Thunder, and Tatum with the Celtics.
It's got to be Shea. I've been on the SGA bandwagon since he got into the league. I love how this kid plays. 31, 6-6, 55% from the field, 39% from three. This guy is a consummate winner. He elevates this team. I know this might be a hot take, a little early for a hot take, but this Thunder team right now, better than the 2011, 2012 team with Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. Just the way that he elevates this team, he's the nucleus with which all the atoms, all the electrons orbit to bring in science into this. It's a perfect way to play basketball the way he does it.
Danny, that's an incredibly hot take, but let's just get back to the MVP. We could have a whole segment just about that, but it's Jokic. It has to be Jokic. He's the best player in the NBA, 26 points per game, 12 rebounds, 9 assists. The connection between him and Jamal Murray is different. There's no connection like that in the league. The Jokic is the runaway candidate for the MVP.
Okay, but the Thunder average 120 points a game. Shea scores a fourth of that. All 5 starters in the starting lineup average double digits in points per game. They're running through the competition. They're number 1 in the West. I love Jokic, but he's the best player. He's not the most valuable player. Shea's the engine that makes this Thunder team go.
Harrison, 15 seconds. Go ahead.
It's still Jokic, and you do make fair points, but realistically, I think if you take Jokic off that Nuggets team, they're not a great team by any means.
All right, but if you take Shea off the Thunder, they're just some young Bucks who are doing okay, but they have this all-star, all-NBA point guard that, in my opinion, the third best point guard in the NBA.
All right, guys, we gotta wrap up that question. Nick Saban, of course, going viral for his comments in the U.S. Congress this week on the NIL. What did you make of the legendary coach at Alabama's comment?
I think he's losing it. I think he's losing it a little bit, and I have all the respect in the world for what he's done with Alabama. He's one of the greatest coaches in any sport ever. But this is not just the game is changing. You know, the headwinds are different. This is the complete paradigm shift. He's talking about he doesn't want to make players employees. He wants there to be revenue sharing. Here's the thing, though. NIL, it disproportionately benefits the type of players that Saban recruits, as in the top players in the world at their level and their age. And when you have an NIL deal and this money does go to you, you have the opportunity to create your individual brand. Why are we taking that away? Why are we taking away that autonomy from players? Why are we forcing there to be revenue sharing? I don't like it at all.
I could see your point with that, but realistically, you don't want the money to get into the heads of these players, right? Because all that money could totally change them as a person. You see guys like Johnny Manziel going on to the NFL, football, and money changed them. But realistically, I don't want to see money change players. I think that with what Nick Saban is saying, I do see his point, but realistically, the money whole situation with the NIL, the players can't change. They have to keep who they are, and I want them to focus more on athletics rather than getting that bag.
So before NIL, every NFL player every college player was a paragon of virtue. They didn't do anything for any incentive ever, as if NFL and NIL automatically makes players greedy and full of avarice. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a different way. It's a legalized way for players to benefit off their likeness. That's why NCAA football is back in some respects. So are we saying that in the past there was no illicit benefits given to players, no Mercedes-Benz under the table to get you to come to your school? It doesn't make any sense. I think if there was none of that before this, you would be in the right, but I don't think that's true.
No, there most likely was, definitely, but NIL and being able to pay these players, these athletes, you just can't let that get to your head because money changes people. You see that with everybody, money changes them. You don't want these athletes to do that because they're robbing themselves of money more in the future when they make it to the pros.
Okay, but I want to bring up one more point on the coaching angle of this.
You guys got about 90 seconds.
If Saban is talking about how the game he used to coach is gone, well, guess what? Coaches need to adapt. And perhaps looking at it through the lens of all these players want is money, they want guarantees. If I devoted my entire life to a sport where if I get injured, I can no longer play, yeah, I'd want the bag, even if I'm 18, 19, 20 years old. So how can we blame these kids?
But now do you look at character in terms of NIL and the character of player you're recruiting? Maybe there's certain background things that coaches don't like. And that would never have been something with NIL. I mean, I'm a full supporter of it, don't get me wrong. But is that something that coaches have to take into account now?
But how do we even regulate it? It's beyond who do you recruit, and then how do you regulate how you recruit and how you pay and how you compensate? It doesn't make. I mean, and then we saw Dartmouth basketball; they formed a union. Is this the way of the future? I think that's a great idea, personally.
45 seconds, guys.
It's a possibility, but then again, I just don't want money to get to these players' heads because athletics will make them, and once they get to the pros, they'll be making way more money than NIL could ever even
Harrison, if
mention.
you're playing football at that level, you've already got an ego. So what's the point? You're already corrupted by your own self-concept.
It's the humbleness will get you further in life. That's my whole thing.
Everyone's got to have an ego if you're that great. Everyone, even the most
enough.
humble.
Fair enough.
All right, guys, that'll do it for this edition of The Lineup this week. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner. Go.
Excellent. Soccer is fun. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're the family.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were on my team. Wait,
Joining us right now is expert analyst Giuseppe Oliveri. Welcome to the rotation.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's get into it. All right, guys, let's talk some NHL here. The Panthers, surprising run to the Stanley Cup a year ago. You think they can get back to it? Giuseppe, we'll go to you first.
Well, I'll tell you right now, last year, yeah, it was very shocking. This year, I'd be shocked if they don't make it. This was a 8 seed last year that made a run to the Cup, knocking off President's Trophy winner Boston Bruins, by the way, doing it in their own home in Game 7. And now this is undoubtedly, I think, the best team in the league. So, yeah, in the East and the West, I think the Florida Panthers are head over heel favorites to go back to the Cup.
Undoubtedly the best team in the league, Giuseppe?
Absolutely.
Come on now. You can't say that with Vegas even being here. They're not in the same conference. We'll get to that later. But realistically, I'm not liking Florida's chances this year. Sergei Bobrovsky in the playoffs stole a bunch of games for them in the playoffs. Why? I see like where you're going. You know, they've gotten better. But realistically, that was a Cinderella run last year, beating Boston. But kind of, you have to look at that season that Boston had. You had to know something was going to happen, right? You had to know that those playoffs, once they get there, something weird was going to happen, and it did. That was a Cinderella run for Florida, man.
Okay, you could talk about Boston, but then what about playing Carolina, and what about actually going to the Cup? Look, and also Toronto, by the way, that was dying to play Florida. See how that worked out for them. This is a team right now, especially after the deadline, which they won, acquiring Vladimir Tarasenko. And I get he's not the same player that he was years ago with St. Louis, but he is still a top player in the postseason. We saw that last year with his time in New York, scoring 3 goals in 7 games against New Jersey. And Kyle Oposo, an under-the-radar pickup for depth. He has experience. He's a little bit older. But at the end of the day, he's definitely going to add to those third, fourth lines that he's going to be playing on. And if you want to talk about Sergei Bobrovsky, I'd love to, because I think he's a top 5 goaltender in the league this year. In the past, yeah, he's definitely been shaky for Florida, but he is playing some of his best hockey since his Columbus days right now. And if he could do that last year, stealing games, stealing series, if you want to put it, if he's on his A game, which he is right now, and come playoff time, he still will be in front of the best offense in the league and one of the most slept-on defenses in the league. This is a squad that has, I think, the easiest run to the Stanley Cup since Tampa Bay.
I hate to argue another point for Vegas, but you said Florida won the trade deadline. That's not correct. Vegas definitely won the trade deadline. All right, I see that face that you make when you look at Noah Hannafin, you look at Anthony Mantha, a couple other guys, Thomas Hertl. What are you talking about? It's totally Vegas, but back to that point, I see, again, your thoughts for Florida. My pick to get out of the Eastern Conference are the Leafs. They're going to do it for the first time in 70 years.
Lord Harrison, the Leafs? Are we serious right now?
We're serious.
You know what I want to compare the Toronto Maple Leafs to? The Dallas Cowboys. They are one of the best regular season teams I have seen, and Austin Matthews undoubtedly having a historic year, offensively scoring goals, putting the puck in the net. But this is a team that loses time and time again in the playoffs, and they convince themselves that nothing is wrong. And again, this is a team that's made 0 changes. Their goaltending has been very shaky, although I will give them credit. It's been better this back half of the year. But come playoff time, this is not a performing team in the postseason. And they made it out of the first round against Tampa, a very shaky, battered Tampa team last year. And what happened again? I'm going to bring up Florida. They lost to Florida. They wanted them so bad. If you're going to lose to the 8 seed Panthers, you better pray to God you do not see them this year. I mean, President's Trophy favorites right now.
Listen, the reason I say the Leafs is simply because of the goaltending. You mentioned it. Ilya Samsonov has been incredible this back half of the year, and that was the major question for the Leafs. They, frankly, could not stop puck from going in the back of the net. Ilya Samsonov looked like he should have went to the minors how bad he was playing. Right, he turned it around.
I'm sorry, man. We got to cut you off for a second because I got to ask you kind of the whole finality of the season. Giuseppe, we'll start with you. Who's going to the Cup?
Jack, thank you so much for cutting Harrison off. I couldn't listen to his Leafs takes anymore. I think it's going to be a rematch. Harrison, I'll give you that. I do think Vegas is going back to the Cup. I think Florida's going back to the Cup. But this time, it's Florida coming out on top. I'll say they do it in 6 or 7.
Dallas and the Leafs. That is definitely the Stanley Cup matchup. Dallas in 7.
All right, we got to go to break, but when we come back, Harrison and Danny will give you all the details on this year's March Madness. Don't go anywhere.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Yeah, Mike.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, Do stars visit their friends?
Look! Welcome to Sports Talk. We're going to switch gears now to discuss all things March Madness, because, fellas, after all, it is March. The tournament schedule is not finalized yet, but Danny, Harrison, and Giuseppe, let's talk about your early predictions for March Madness. Start with mid-major basketball, fitting here at Hofstra. Who is your mid-major dark horse in this tournament?
Give me the Mountain Valley Conference champions, the Drake Bulldogs. 28 wins, a massive victory over Indiana State. This team is very well positioned to get between a 9 to 11 seed. It's a very winnable game for this type of crew. And they're a strong program, and they're back in the dance. They've been in the dance a little bit these last couple of years. I think they're a really strong favorite to be a dark horse, as ironic as that seems to say.
Giuseppe?
Yeah, no, I love St. Mary's coming out of Western Conference play here. I definitely love how they played against Gonzaga. They just beat him in the WCC championship the other night. It's a younger team, don't get me wrong, but it's a scary team on paper and definitely on the court as well.
A little bit basic, Giuseppe, but I'll give it to you.
I don't know about basic.
A little basic. Come on.
Realistically, the C in CAA stands for Charleston.
No way.
Charleston
Oh, God.
all the
Oh,
way.
God. Oh, God.
I'm just getting hated on today for whatever reason. That's just the case.
Nobody likes to take Harrison.
Nobody likes any of my takes, apparently. Well, here we are. I mean, realistically, Charleston, they're put together so well, back to back. Their core is incredible. They lost 5 seniors. They still were playing at an elite level. Charleston, 1,000%. Book it.
They were ranked last year. They weren't ranked this year. They had 31 wins last year. They don't have 31 wins this year. They almost beat San Diego State last year. They're going to probably play a 4 seed, and that 4 seed right now in bracketology is Auburn. Auburn is going to mop the floor with them.
Yeah,
Auburn is in my
Harrison.
Final Four. There's no way Charleston, this weakened Charleston team that had to replace those 5 seniors, is going to make it out.
Harrison, did you go into a coma or something just to wake up last
I'm
year?
here.
Yeah, sure.
I'm
I
here.
love Charleston, but this is a very different looking team than last year. We had a handful of seniors, hit the door on their way out. Charleston is just not as strong as they were, and I could call it a miracle that they made it out of the CAA.
I look to their best player, Rain Smith, and he's a stud, to be completely honest.
Oh, wait, how many
with you.
points per game, Harrison? 13 a game? Rain Smith?
13, but I mean, he's able to dish it out well, and he had a bunch of assists too. He's going to be a key guy going down the stretch.
All right, but what about Tucker DeVries from Drake, 21 points per game? That's 5th in the country. That's tailor-made for some March Madness. If you have a guy who's a high scorer, he's hard to guard in March every time.
Harrison, you make a good point, but you're not even, I don't think, naming their best player, Ante Brzovic. I mean,
It's another name.
People call this guy Mini Jokic on the floor. I had the chance to be down at the CAA tournament. He looks like Jokic and he plays like Jokic. So if you have this guy who's 6'10", 6'11", who can shoot from the outside and get inside, and he's a bully inside, how do you stop?
All right, in a mid-major conference, again, it's you have a great guy who can score, but it also comes down to teamwork, how you made it out of your conference. Mickey Mouse ring for the Charleston Cougars, as you should know, Mr. Leiden. They beat the 7th-seed Stony Brook Seawolves to do it. They didn't face tough competition in that tournament. Versus Drake, they're peaking at the right time. And even, I'll throw Giuseppe a bone. When you beat Gonzaga to win your conference tournament, of course you're going to have some good looks coming your way come March, even though I do think that the take is a little basic.
Danny, you don't have to throw me a bone, man. St. Mary's is a very good team coming into March Madness.
They're not terrible.
And yeah, talk about Gonzaga. I am fully aware this is not the same Gonzaga program we have seen in the past.
Thank you.
But when you put in these top college basketball programs like Duke and North Carolina, and I'm going to throw Gonzaga with them because in their prime they were very good and nearly unstoppable, that is still something. And yeah, they played them, a handful of times, but you could also argue the same thing for Drake playing Indiana State. When you look at their quad 1 wins, the reason they're so good, they played Indiana State, a handful of times there, and they did it again in winning their conference championship over
I want to
Indiana
borrow
State.
a phrase I heard earlier in the show. You play who you play, okay?
that's a
You're in the West, you play who you play. You
you're
play
really
better
gonna-
teams. You play Boise State. You play Gonzaga. If you're in the MVC, you're playing against Indiana State, who had a terrific – they're the best they've been since Larry Bird was at Indiana State Sycamore. So, yeah, I'm riding with Drake because they're playing a team that is playing very well. They're a last 4 team in Indiana State. They're not these bunch of scrubs. Same with Gonzaga. They're not the top 10 team in the country, but they were ranked. So you can't make the case that Gonzaga is a valuable win while also discounting the times that they played Indiana State. They're a good team.
I can't believe that you stole a quote from Harrison on the show so far, just the things he's been dishing out. If you want him to back you up in this, be my guest. That's more ammunition for me.
I think we can both agree that Charleston's not going to win a first-round game. They're playing a really strong 4 seed if it's Auburn.
It's always good to know that we can find middle ground.
Thank you. I know, it's great. It's so
All
good.
right, guys, we're going to leave it off while we're all civil here, right? It'll be interesting to see how the bracket shapes out, but that'll do it for now when we come back. Find out our panelists' hot takes.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Start up the heat. Let's take things up a notch in this segment of Taking Shots. I want you guys to both hit us with your hottest takes of the season. Danny, shoot your shot. I know it's a pretty hot one.
Yep. So we've all heard of ladies in waiting. I'm going to tell you about frauds in waiting. The Boston Celtics. They've only made it out of the LeBron-less East once. Once. They have 5 Eastern Conference Finals losses over the past decade. Are you kidding me? I think Tatum is a very overrated player. Jaylen Brown is not a playoff performer. They are a pedestrian bench scoring team, so any injury is going to hurt them disproportionately. And the thing with the number 1 seed is, yeah, they're far and away the best team in the East by record. The number 1 seed has only won the NBA championship 6 times over the past decade. So it's not a sure thing, even though they're far and away by record the best team in the East. That's why the Celtics are frauds in waiting.
Danny, that's a very hot take. My hot take is that Francisco Alvarez will be the 3rd best catcher in baseball this year. When you look at his defensive metrics, he's one of the best catchers in baseball. And then that power, you can't deny it. I say 3rd because he's going to be behind Adley Rutschman, who everybody that follows baseball could tell you is definitely the number 1 catcher in baseball. Then there's Will Smith. My prediction, the hot take, Francisco Alvarez will be number 3.
Now let's shift it over to women's basketball, a sport that is picking up a lot of steam. I do think some of that steam is going to depart when Caitlin Clark makes it to the WNBA. Now let's face it, the WNBA is going to be very happy to have her. But she is the face of collegiate basketball, and she was in many ways the introduction to the sport for many casual fans. But Caitlin Clark is such a unique player. She's the only player in the women's college game who could shoot like she can, score like she can, just captivate an audience like she can with her record-setting, accolade-setting abilities. And the thing is, Iowa's not really a championship contender. I mean, yeah, they're up there, but they're not going to win it. They're playing against teams that are undefeated, and they're playing in much stronger conferences. When she's gone, you don't have a player who can really find that type of mold again. And if Angel Reese, even if she stays in collegiate basketball, she's not somebody who can really take that mantle. She's too controversial of a player from last season's championship run. I think there's no face of women's college basketball after Clark leaves, and that's why I think they're going to see some drop-off. A lot of the fans are going to shift their attention to the pros, and that's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in, the Caitlin Clark world we live in.
Danny, this take might be the highest take that we're going to say here.
I'm ready.
It's frankly going to be that the Chargers are going to win their division.
What?
They're going to beat the Chiefs twice this year. The Raiders, they're terrible. Do we even have to talk about the Raiders? The Broncos, no Russell Wilson, but how much does that mean? Russell Wilson's horrible. The Chargers are going to win this division. Jim Harbaugh, their new head coach, him and Justin Herbert are going to win this division. Their defense, not good. Jim Harbaugh is going to coach them up because that's what he's done his entire career in the NFL and in college.
Jack, let me just say, you're going to beat the Chiefs twice? They're going to beat Taylor Swift's boyfriend twice in a season? That's absurd.
They won't be dating by then.
That's ridiculous.
They won't be dating
Danny,
by
I feel like this is, I can draw similarities to sort of when these Jets fans, these Bills fans say, oh, we're going to take down the Patriots this year. It's not happening. Come on.
How valuable is a coach? Does a coach go
Very
out there
valuable.
and catch passes for you, kick field goals for you, Harrison? I don't think he does.
He does everything but that. Everything but that. The way he coaches his teams in college, Michigan,
They won the championship once, and now all of a sudden he's a savior for the Chargers. That doesn't make any sense.
We all acknowledge how good he was, though, throughout his whole college tenure. NFL, he got to the Super Bowl.
Ohio State was his father for many years. What are you talking about? We acknowledged how good he was.
He's been incredible his whole college tenure. Yeah, you want to argue against Ohio State, Ryan Day doing great things over there, but Jim Harbaugh is the guy, and I think the hardest part in the whole NFL is to get that quarterback that could take you to the promised land. And the main reason why I say this take is because Justin Herbert can take this team to the promised land. He is an elite quarterback.
The best Harbaugh coach coaches Baltimore. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, that's
all I'm going to say.
Terrible.
That's all I'm going to say.
That's horrible.
That's all I'm going to say.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up now. As we continue here on the show, as things have gotten pretty heated here. So we're going to go around the world of sports to see who is taking a victory lap right after the break.
I immigrated to America when I was 20 from a country called Uruguay. I have 2 careers. I'm in the Army Reserves, and I have a civilian career as an engineer. And I have 2 wonderful children. Every day is a challenge to make sure that the time that I have, I spend with them. It doesn't matter how tired you are, you have to be there. You have to be present for them. You have to try to teach them when they learn something new and it just clicks in their brain. I just realized I could do this. And you can just see in their faces. It's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
We only have a couple of minutes left, so let's talk about a team that is killing it lately. This is Victory Lap. The Las Vegas Aces have sold out their season tickets, the first WNBA team to do so. We're just talking about college basketball WNBA, guys.
That's Victory Lap. It's a big Victory Lap, and it adds fuel to the fire of my hot take that the WNBA is going to get a mass infusion of fans. I mean, they're the first team to ever do it. Of course, it would start with Vegas. They're a 2-time championship franchise. They have stacked the deck, no pun intended, over these past couple of years. So it's a great moment for women's professional basketball. And as we are well aware, the game in the pro game is growing.
It's definitely growing. And you look at WNBA attendance in the past year, jumped 16%. And you say that might not be a significant jump. That is a significant jump, 16% in any source of any of that. But you look at the WNBA, the draft, tickets sold out in 15 minutes. It's a growing sport. You love to see it.
That's like a Taylor Swift concert.
That is.
Second reference we made to Taylor Swift this entire show. Also, Aces average nearly 10,000 fans per game. That's a lot. That's a lot of fans for anything.
That's a nice boost, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so you're not only selling tickets, you're growing your revenue, and you're showing that the business model of the WNBA is solvent, and it's growing.
So how much of this do you guys think contributes to the championship? Of course, they're a real top of the league roster, but that championship
you
buys
draw
fans.
you draw crowds by winning, as you just said. So I think part of it is the success, and part of it is the game is naturally seeing more of an audience, more eyeballs on it.
Sports is growing in Vegas, and you have a couple teams going there in the past couple years. And WNBA, throw it into the mix. It's another sport that's growing, especially in Vegas. It's great to see for the women. They've been doing a lot to get this league as popular as it's becoming, and they deserve all the credit for it.
We had our disagreements today, but I could not agree more.
We agree on that.
Yeah, we
Wow,
agree
what
on
a way
that.
to end. Really,
yeah.
really
We all
civil
made up.
way to
We're all
end.
friends now.
Yeah, so this has been Over the Line. He's Danny. He's Harrison. I'm Jack. We'll see you next time.
Gotta say, Las Vegas Aces again.